So, exercise pillar. We have a kettlebell. It's not a good one. It's very rusty. It's actually my bottom plate for my freediving thing. And a mask, a freediving mask, just so you know. But obviously exercise, as you could imagine, a very important pillar. Rob's got a pretty good intro for exercise.
Well, whenever I mention it, people shudder. Everyone, oh no, back away slowly. But really what we're talking about is just movement. Some sort of movement, physical adversity, like again to the evolutionary stuff, our bodies need some sort of physical adversity to function normally, and it can be anything that you enjoy, and it should be something you enjoy. One of the spin that I put on this one is that you're not doing it for your bikini body, Adam. It's all about how you
my dad bod.
Yeah, that's right. It's about how you about your mental health, and I find myself, I can get up in the dark occasionally to go to the gym, and if the idea that I know I'm going to be a happier, better person, a better dad because I've gone to the gym and I'm calm and I can be patient, that'll get me going, rather than you should lose weight. You go, yeah, right, and you roll over and you forget about it. So that's the intro. I think this is a big area that you know a lot about, being an athlete and being that your job is a sport. So what's your experience? How did freediving?
Yeah, look, I found freediving very fortunately, I suppose, at about the same time where I was struggling, and so I went spearfishing, literally just off this boat ramp here. And so spearfishing, if you don't know, is freediving with a gun. So on one breath with a gun, trying to shoot fish in the face. That's what spearfishing is. But I ended up not actually spearfishing. I just started following this other guy around who was spearfishing. And but for that 2 hours that I was out there with him, I just felt like Adam again. And the previous 6 or 7 months to that, I was not Adam. I was a shell of a dad. I was a shell of a husband. I was a shell of a human, really, getting back to it being debilitating. And so that 2 hours that I was in the ocean, and the ocean is, really still the only uniquely wild place we have. And so there was that element of, there was a bit of fear, there was a bit of absolute wonder. And so at the time, I wasn't exactly sure what it was that I loved about it, but I said to this friend of mine, I don't know what that was, but I felt like me again. I loved it and I want more. And so that sparked a bit of a journey and a search to do a freediving course, which took me to Bali. And what I just found in this freediving was, just a whole different type of sport and recreation. It was one that you had to be, there was a physical component, but there was definitely a massive mental component to it. And what kind of intrigued me with it to begin with was myself and this Russian guy had obviously been doing some homework before we went to Bali, and we were both playing around with breath holds. So we both had these pretty big breath holds for a level 1 course, which was, I remember exactly what mine was. 4 minutes 34, his was 4 minutes 21. So I would literally wait for him to take a breath, and then I go, I got this Russian bloke. But when we went to the ocean, he could only kind of manage about 5 or 6 meters, and then he'd feel the pressure start to build and he'd come barreling straight up. And this is what kind of intrigued me into this whole how humans deal with pressure and stress and anxiety and all this type of stuff. And which is really how my company was born, because I started to search for things on just pressure. And there really wasn't anything there. When I searched it on Google or YouTube, I got Take the Pressure Down from John Farnham. It was a song. And so I thought there's something in this, so hence the Pressure Project was born. But, I'd always loved exercise, and I'd always loved predominantly more sport than anything. And Rob was talking about just movement, and I suppose any type of movement brings us to being present, generally speaking. And so, things like yoga that is inherently linked with, say, mindfulness, or things like freediving, or things like hitting a yellow tennis ball around, or whatever it is that you're into, what a lot of people don't realize is that the reason you love, or whether it's golf, the reason you love, say for example, golf is because in that moment where you're lining up that white ball with the pin that's 150 meters away and you're focusing on your technique, you're not thinking about those pressures and stresses and anxious things that are going on back at your household or your workplace. You're literally just focusing on this white ball, which you want to put in that hole 150 meters away. So I think where people kind of sometimes get the whole exercise movement shudder is they think of being in a gym and someone telling them to work really hard and it being really hard. Whereas I think what Rob was alluding to earlier and is like the half an hour could be a half an hour walk on the beach, where your heart rate's over 100, but you're not stressed, but you're in a fat burning mode or a movement mode, and humans from you look at a caveman or woman type of thing. I mean, cavemen would do, I think I read something ages ago, it was like about 14 kilometers of movement a day, and that's what the body got used to. And you didn't see very many overweight cavemen or people that were kind of worried about their mental state back then. It was just we walk and we hunt and we average about 14 kilometers a day because we're trying to find food. And I suppose the thing with nowadays is we're so busy that exercise or movement is something that people and you probably hear it, I just don't get the time. I don't get the time to do that. And I think the biggest overriding message is you just got to find it. Yeah,
you've got to make it. I think you've got to carve that that time out of you, like I said, out of the fabric. You've got to thread it through. But it's that physical adversity and endorphins versus the mindful pursuit, like the focusing on that little yellow ball, or the running, step after step is a really meditative pursuit, and they're both important. We know that exercise, the reason we're doing it is, again, not necessarily for body image or weight loss, but it's for the mental structure, and that combination of mindfulness and endorphins makes it an incredibly powerful tool in your arsenal to combat depression or any mental health problem. And as I said earlier, if you can chip away at it regularly and have something like 30 minutes, and now this depends on what type of exercise, which we'll drill down into, but something like 30 minutes a day for 5 days of the week, and that can be from 4:30 till 5 a.m. That's a possibility. It means you've got to go to bed a bit earlier, but if you can do that, then in the studies that were done, the proportion of benefit was equivalent to a drug. So, and for people who are really unwell, we can stack that benefit. If we can get you to exercise and you can use a medicine, you can double that benefit. So, I guess as blokes, there's an added bonus where we think about how our muscles respond to strength exercises, and we know that we can boost our testosterone and we can boost our growth hormone by doing strength exercises, weights, but also endurance stuff. We know that that low testosterone is associated with depression, and so it doesn't mean that if you have depression you have low testosterone, but we know that it's another hormone that's in part of the picture. And so for blokes, doing weights can be a fantastic measure to boost your natural depression fighting hormones, and it makes you feel really tough as well.
And I suppose that's a really important point, is that we quite often do reach for the quick fix, and I suppose in society at the moment, because it is this time issue, the quick fix is go and see the doc and then try and just get something to help you, whereas you've got these natural things that occur in our body that you can promote and produce through some form of exercise that have zero side effects. That's the thing. Like there's some drugs that are helpful in a short-term type of quick fix type of thing, but if you then start to take them long-term, and this is more your field, that there are side effects. So just from a more sciencey point of view, and those chemicals that we spoke about that don't have the side effects, what in particular is dopamine or endorphins, and how does that kind of bolster or help us in this fight against ourselves, I suppose?
So the natural or the reason that these things are there. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's involved in seeking or pleasure seeking, and we get a burst of dopamine as a reward from our brain when we do something or behave a certain way. We get dopamine when we have sex. We get dopamine when we have a really good workout, and certain drugs like alcohol, tobacco, cocaine, they release dopamine. So its role in our brain is complex. But in terms of exercise, we know that you can become addicted to exercise. People get this dopamine release, which is a satisfying, calming sensation when after exercising, and sometimes during. Endorphins are there in response to the stress hormones. So when we say do an endurance run, your body realizes that you're performing an endurance task and releases hormones as painkillers. Endorphins are painkillers, and they make you feel good. So it allows you to keep performing the task that you're asking your body to do without having the discomfort and pain. And then after you relax and the endurance event is over, you'll notice the aches and pains a little bit more again.
Sure.
It's a fairly minor pain relieving effect, but it can be profound if you do it regularly. So these are naturally occurring substances in our body, like adrenaline and like serotonin.
Yep.
All of which play a role. Exercise also releases serotonin, which is the main neurotransmitter that our medications target, and we'll touch on that when we get into the medication section. But yeah, that's the basis for these two.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I suppose that overriding message with all of that is that, those things are free. We produce them. You just got to unlock that. And they don't have those side effects, which we already kind of touched on. So I suppose it's, in terms of one of the pillars, it's just something that, you just got to schedule in. If you're one of those people that says, like, I just simply don't have the time, we'll make it somehow. And if you are in a position where you do no exercise right now, I'm not saying you need to schedule in 7 days a week for an hour and absolutely bust yourself. Start small, and progressive overload, they used to call it when I did a personal training course, which was, start with 20 minutes 3 times a week and then pump it up from there. Once you start to get happy with that, then you might get to 30 or 40 minutes 5 times a week. Because if you just kind of all of a sudden go like, all right, well, I'm going to sign up for the gym tomorrow and I'm going to do a body pump class for an hour, you probably won't go back because you'll be sore for the next 3 weeks.
Once those endorphins wear off, the pain will return.
It will return. So yeah, I suppose the message is that it's important, you just need to do it, but do it smart as well. So
one of the other intangible benefits, and it links us to our next pillar, is that exercise is a fantastic social endeavour. You can do it on your own, you can run, but there's team sports, and there's freediving, for example, is an amazing tribe, an amazing group of people that we dive with, and it's an incredibly supportive environment, and that is something that you can deliberately seek out in the type of exercise that you do. In the current crisis, when there is a lot of stress and worry, there's a lot of indoor exercise, there's a lot of cans of soup and bottles of milk going around. But whatever you can do to carve out some physical adversity for your body, and a regular amount, if it's 5 minutes in week 1, that's okay. Just chip away at it and be regular.
Yeah. And you're saying there's a in terms of the different types of mental health issues as well. I mean, obviously the two that always spring to mind is depression and anxiety. And you're saying different activities can help the different types as well.
Yeah, there's a little bit of evidence that endurance sports like running are a little bit better for people with depression, whereas resistance activities, so things like lifting heavy weights, can help with anxiety. I think those associations are important, and if you're particularly struggling with anxiety, then you might choose weights first, but it doesn't mean you don't get benefit from the other types of exercise. So it's an interesting association, and I don't certainly know why. But
it would almost, I'm just thinking out loud, if you think about depression seems to be a bit more of a prolonged constant type of issue with people. I mean, from my experience with it anyway. And so maybe, you know, when you swim a kilometre, because it is long, it's almost a real kind of meditative type of thing. Or running 10K is a long step. Whereas anxiety, quite often you can associate it with anxiety attacks and like bursts of anxiety, and then you come back down. And so maybe that's that kind of resistance training is like, you know, pick up some weights, really kind of bang, 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 get that heavy release, and then after say a half an hour or 45 minute, just.
I've always thought about it in sort of those terms, where with the resistance, a big weight session has a really good calm down and release, and it's that calm down and release after the heavy session that can be maybe that's where the benefit is.
Yeah, cool. So there's a pretty handy tip that I most definitely didn't know. But you know, maybe even a balance there as well. You do a balanced kind of fitness regime. If you don't know anything about fitness or weights or whatever, go and seek someone out. You know, I'm not a personal trainer. I know stuff about you know, freediving training, etc. But I'm definitely no PT. So if you are someone that has never just been exposed to exercise, well, then seek someone out who can help you as well. Just like with the diet, you know, there's people that know how your body works. And you certainly don't want to get into the point where you're trying to help yourself with depression or anxiety, and then you do an injury and it probably doesn't help the issue. So start small, chunk it up, seek some advice, and go from there. But you know, I personally know from my point of view, I like something to work towards. So I know something that helped me when I was in depression the first time was I found I gained a lot of weight and all the rest of it. And then I used to be a swimmer, so I actually just picked something, and at that point there was a Mooloolaba triathlon coming up, so I just picked the ocean swim. I'm not a very good runner, so I went, I can swim. And it was just something that in the future that I could train for. And so I'd get myself down to the pool and I'd train for it. And then, you know, I started to get fitter. I started to feel a bit better about myself. And then I went into the competition. The Mooloolaba Triathlon did quite well. So then that was a bit of a hit of dopamine as well. It would go like, hey, you worked hard for this and you did pretty well. Maybe there's something in this. And so, you know, for me, quite often I've got my goals around diving at a competition level, and you know, it keeps me training. I have a little training group. We all get together. Rob's part of that. And so, there's that social aspect as well.
The psychology of that is interesting. The future thinking, you know, like having a relationship with your future self. So setting goals and trying to achieve them, you know, is protective. And the challenging those negative thoughts when you do succeed is another fantastic, you know, psychological mechanism. But the social side of all of this and the tribe is probably the golden center of all of the benefit in exercise.
So I think we'll link that in with the next topic being tribe, which I think is one of the most important from a social creature, from a human evolutionary standpoint. I think this will be quite interesting and probably one of the really big cogs in this overall wheel. So